So let's have a go at making this Avalonia run on Windows. This should be cross-platform and should just automatically work on Windows. And we're also going to just open up Visual Studio this time, just to mix it up a bit instead of using Mac and Rider. So we've got the project open. Let's just see if it runs. And I've selected Desktop App, which is obviously the one we want to run. And it opens straight up and looks pretty much exactly the same. The audio now is not capturing, I don't think, this mic, but it's running obviously fine. So as you'd expect with Avalonia, you can literally open it between Mac, Windows, Linux, whichever you want, and it works. So what we want to do next is to add the volume bar here. This bar wants to animate. And what happens is it looks like this white expands up and then red appears if you go above this line. So instead of moving, a white and a red bar, all we're going to do is make a bar the same background color and start from the top and expand it down. So if it was all the way down, it would disappear. And as you come up, it exposes the white and red. So that's the idea behind making that work. So let's just start by adding the view model stuff we need. So we'll go to View Models, Main View Model. And in here, we will need a new private property. We're going to need the volume bar height, similar to how we've got the volume container size, which really should be volume container height. Let's use one called volume bar height. And this is set or bound, I believe, in the view model. So if we look for where the volume container height, actually no it wasn't, it was set in the code behind, wasn't it, in the constructor I believe. There you go. Volume container size, we set the volume container height now. So what we have to do to set this property is give it a name like this, volume container, but we want it to be on the volume bar itself, and that volume bar is here. So we add a name and call this one as we'd expect, something like volume bar. And then in the code behind, we'll also have to add the volume bar control, same as a volume container. Telling us to make these fields read-only as well, which is true. We should really make them read-only, I guess. And then in the constructor, we'll do volume bar, and we named it volume bar. So that should pull in that control. And then finally in the update sizes part, I think I pressed build by mistake there. We do volume bar height is the volume bar bounds height, just the same. So that binds us all. I think that's all we need to get the volume bar height. So now what we want to do is just close all these extra windows. We want to add a bar to the view model. So back to where we were. There we go, at the volume bar here. And you've got the red bar here and the white one below. We want to put one at the top. It wants to be in row 0, that doesn't really matter. But the important thing is we want the IntelliSense. Got no IntelliSense. The row span to be 2 to span over both rows, so it's effectively the full height. And then the height now, we are literally working on no IntelliSense at the minute. The height wants to be bound to whatever we called it in here, which was volume bar height, but obviously the auto-generated property will be capital V. So that should now bind to the height. Let's just delete all this temp code for the moment for setting the volume bar position. And let's just get rid of that temp timer, because we'll set that to a property when we're ready as well. And now we need to work out the volume bar height. And we want to do that in this capture here. So, or rather in the callback of the data. So every time we call back, we want to now set the volume bar. So this is actually starting to get, this will expand, the start capture is really expanding into more logic. So let's just cut all this out. And I believe if you just do extract method, it will do a method for us, and we'll call this process audio chunk. Otherwise, we're going to start mixing the methods. What they're doing, it should be nice and small. So in here now, set the volume height. So the volume bar height will equal the volume bar size we have now. So the overall size, if that was set to that, it'd be 100%. You want to divide it by, we have on the bar 60 dB. So effectively units of 60, if we care about units. So the units coming back are in lufs, which is decibels, and our bar is 60 decibels high. So if we divide it by 60, now we have a unit in height that equals 1 decibel. We can now times that simply by the negative of the audio chunk data, because the bar is inverted, obviously, it's at the top and going down as opposed to going down and up. And let's just set it to the short-term lufs for now. And then I believe that's it. I think that will set the bar. Now, obviously, we've got to, what's this complaining about now? Volume bar height. So it can't resolve this. And that's because we haven't put the word binding in, because we didn't have IntelliSense. I didn't spot that. That would be why. And while I think on that, while that's building as well, we need to update the device, which I think is device 1 somewhere. So we pass in the device ID here, which we should probably specify like that. I'm just going to set it to default for now to see if it captures this PC's microphone instead. So I'm not sure which device it is, to be honest, and we haven't really done the link. And that looks really bad. So that's something's not right there, but you can see, yeah, so if I'm talking, that does look like it's the lufs is correct, but there's bars all over the show. This is doing some weird bouncy stuff, so we've obviously done something wrong in the view model, or in the view rather. So what have we done wrong? We have a row span of 2, height fill white. Well, I guess that should be the background color for a start. That should be whatever this background color is. I'm not really seeing any issue there. So we done our math wrong, maybe. Let's just see what this comes out as. So volume bar height we have, and we're setting the volume bar height. Oh, hang on. We're using underscore volume bar height, not, oh, hang on. Yes, we've got 2 properties doing the same thing here. What we needed was, the volume bar height is the actual overall volume bar, and we wanted volume bar mask height as well, which is a property we can bind to. So this wants to be a volume bar mask height, not the actual volume bar height. We were effectively pulling the height of this and setting it to the same height, and it was like a loop. So now this is the mask height that we calculate. And let's see if that works, and it's correctly the right color as well. So volume bar height, and we then need to update this as well, obviously. Volume bar mask height. Let's give that a go. Let's see, volume bar height 414, and this is 300. And nope. Maybe it's behind, and is that bouncing still? No, it's not bouncing now. So it's there, but you can't see it. So is it a simple case of Z index? And we have no IntelliSense tool. Let's just move it down below first so it comes after, and I presume will appear on top. That should probably do for now. And there we go. So now we have a bar that is not reacting at all correctly. And we want this to be vertical. I was like, well, I'm going to close this to see if I can get my IntelliSense back. So no IntelliSense. So let's just go back to Rider, and then let's get a visual on this. That's easier now. We can actually see what's going on. And let's see if we get IntelliSense back, and let's figure out what we've done wrong here. So can we now do, yeah, vertical alignment top. And now with the top alignment, it looks kind of correct. but the value is not, well, yeah, it is following this LUFS, but it's not instant. Actually, I think it is right, it's just really slow. Yeah, I think that's actually working, but really slowly updating. Right, so if we do that, yeah, so you can see when I'm quiet it stays low, and when I talk it goes high. So it's working, but look how slowly the numbers are updating. So let's try and fix that next. In fact, let's also just fix the volume bar while we're at it as well, the little arrow. Now we've calculated the volume bar, let's do the volume arrow height. And that'll be a similar calculation now. It's the volume percent position, we called it. And that will now be the same kind of thing. It'll be the volume container height, divide by 60 again, decibels, and times, again, the negative of whatever data we want to use. So we'll use loudness for this, or loudness range, I think it was. And let's just double check that now has an arrow which will move with the short-term LUFS in this case. So yeah, you see the arrow is more instant and the LUFS is slower. I think we probably want that the other way around. So now the volume bar, there you go. Volume bar is much more responsive and the arrow kind of lags behind, but this update rate is atrocious. So let's just see if we can fix that. That should be in, I presume, somewhere with this capture service. Oh, wrong buttons, going between Visual Studio and Rider now, getting all the shortcut buttons mistaken. Frequency, record initialize, and what are the overloads? Have we got any overload there? Nope. What about record start? So we just pop out the options. You can see there's a second overload here, and it's got period after flags. So that sounds like what we want. Period here. So let's do, I don't know, 20 milliseconds. It must be on the Mac that the default refresh rate's much faster, and on Windows it's much slower. There we go. Now that's super quick. Now that's crazy jittery. This is, yeah, that's too fast. It's like very bouncy, which is cool that we can do that, but that's too bouncy. So let's soften that. And the numbers are also a little bit too fast. So I like that, but now maybe, I don't know, maybe slow that down. I like this arrow and everything. I like the kind of smoothness of it in a way, just a little bit too quick. So we could slow down the period, potentially, until we get it where we want. Which I guess we could, because you don't need it any quicker than that. See, and that probably wants to be more of an average, though. And that's... yeah, it's also bouncy. We want to put a max limit on that. But I think we just want it to be smoother. So let's change that back to 20. And let's go back to... and in the chunks, let's change this to short-term LUFS, which isn't average, I believe, when we set it. If I find out where we set that, I do believe it's average already. Yeah, so short-term LUFS is already averaged. So that should soften the volume position, which I'm hoping it does. Yeah, so that's now, there you go, that's nice and smooth now, an average of the three. Instead of it just being a slowed down period, you capture it just as fast, but average it out. And then we probably want a double average for this other arrow, which we were using short-term LUFS that lagged behind. So it just wants to lag behind a bit more. So I think we probably just want to have a lot more averaging here on the values. So I think instead of average LUFS being LUFS on these, I think we just make sure we use all the average LUFS. And that should smooth everything out. And let's just see if that... there you go. So that's like, everything's a lot smoother. That's still updating a bit too quick, I think, the text. And I don't know whether... I kind of like that being fast, but I want the text to be slower. So we could, because that's probably more of a preference of this interface, let's just do a little counter or something to update once every 3 times. So private int update counter, a slow tick counter to update the text slower than the graphs and bars. And we will do update counter ++ to increase it, and we can also do it all in one. We can do all that remainder 3, or if we do update counter equals update counter +1 remainder 3, then we will have a counter that just increments and stays between 0, 1, and 2. Counter between 0, 1, 2. And every time counter is at 0. So if counter equals 0, we can update the texts, and for the bars we update all the time. And let's see if that now does a slower text counter. There you go. So now the text is slow and the bars are instant. And let's just change this bar to a more delayed bar, which would be integrated loudness, I think was next. So that should trail behind. And that's wrong. That's integrated loudness. There we go. And there we go. That's completely backwards. Oh yeah, all the LUFs are calculated wrong again. Now we've got a visual, we can kind of tell. These are going smaller, while a smaller value in decibels, when it's negative as well, is higher. So we actually need to invert this. So it needs to be times, or rather plus, the average. Get this right. The average times LUFs, but plus the original. So it needs to go the other way. So if we just copy that, effectively inverting the values, and we'll just change these down again. And again, these values are all obviously fake in a sense. The calculated values come off real data, but we're just making these values up for now, just for a visual. And then once we figure out the advanced math behind calculating these real values, all we have to do is update this and everything works. There we go. So now that's obviously a value, but it goes off, so we need to limit it now. So the question becomes, do you limit it here or in the UI? I'd limit it in the UI because there should not really be a limit on the data being given, but our UI is limited to 60. So we want to limit this with math dot, and this will be negative. So we want the highest value to be 60, or the value given if it's higher than 60. So that's what we want on all of these. And we also want the same limit here because we don't want the height to have to be larger than the bar. So we actually want math.min in this case because it's a positive number. It needs to be the volume bar height or the value that we expect. And this one wants to be volume container height or the value we calculate. And that should stop that bouncing as well. So now the arrow should sit at the bottom until it moves higher than that, which it does. So there you can see it now sits at the bottom and then bounces up. And then these numbers are nice and slow and they kind of calculate off. So that looks pretty cool. That's working in my eyes. Good enough for visual, and the UI is definitely working and it's nice and smooth. And one thing I've just noticed looking at this as well, in the app, we have to inject the audio service here, which is correct. This one is where it goes wrong, so we specify device ID. So we need to rework this that we don't have to recreate it, which means you don't want this device ID and frequency in the constructor. You actually want a call that is public void start recording. Pass them in, or in this case start capture, because we're not recording in a sense. We don't need to store any of those. We can initialize there because we don't need to initialize twice in between recordings, I don't believe. But all this can move out. So we never recreate the service, it just gets reused. So we then don't need to worry about disposing, because when we close the app is the only time we need to dispose. So now we just need to add this function to the capture service interface, which we actually have start. So why don't we just merge this into start? Yeah, that makes much more sense. So let's just move all this into the function that's already called start, actually. And then you can have a pause if you wanted to, instead of a so start, started, and stopping. Yeah, it's two different functions, isn't it, really? Start and stop. No, let's keep it what we were doing, start capture. And put that into the audio service. Void start capturing. And again, we haven't actually called it the same thing. Start capture. Starts capturing audio from a specific. It's not even called start capture, is it really? It's a init capture, I'd say. Initializes capturing of audio from a specific device. And we go back here, init capture, and in here we should really have the inherit doc. And now the capture happens after. And the final thing will now to be on start capture. You don't new this up at all. You just do the audio capture service .init capture with the device ID passed in. And I presume when we call stop, if we ever did need to call stop, that it just stops play. So we don't really have a way to close and change device yet, because initialize capture initializes the device recording it, and we have a record free, which frees up, I believe, a device. In fact, it just frees all. So if we actually just call that before, I think this will actually just free, by the sounds of it, free all resources used by the recording device. Returns if successful. Recording it has not been successfully called. There's no initialized devices. So will that be an exception? Is that going to throw an exception? By the sounds of it, yeah, exceptions. So the simplest thing is to wrap that in a try and don't care catch, basically, because we don't really care if it fails at all. We just want to attempt to free resources. So now we should be able to start and stop and initialize capture on a different device at any point, and it's just going to free up the previous one. So we're only ever capturing one device. And then this complaint, we just want to literally say ignored on purpose because we expect it to be ignored. Initialize new device. And I believe that now should work behind the scenes cleaner. And check we haven't broke anything. And there we go, it's working. So that's the interface done, except this graph now. So this is finally the fun part, the thing we've been waiting to get to probably since the start. So next we need to look up how we're going to do this graph. Have a look around if people have already done it. Have a look at the Skier documentation. Have a look at Avalonia's documentation. See if there's any more updates for graphs. So let's just take a quick look at their website. We haven't looked in a while. This actually looks new as well. Introducing Avalonia XPF, cross-platform WPF. We've seen this on the Discord a few times, people mentioning. And it's meant to support opening WPF apps directly instead of having to remake them, I guess. See, there's a graph similar to what we might want. What's that? Doesn't say. Yeah, doesn't say there. Let's go to the get started. Oh, nice. This is much better. Here we go. So you'll see I mentioned before about the documentation not really having a kind of getting started, where do I go, what do I do, kind of introduction. This has now got exactly what we asked for. And it's really nice as well. So there you go, a simple how do you get started, download the extension, install templates, and then next up, I'm featured there nicely now, cool. And we have, yes, there you go, communities. They've got a Discord now as well. They're recommending the .NET Discord directly. They've got Telegram, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. They've got samples, which takes us straight to the samples. So this is all nice. Now, this is definitely an improvement on the original. Let's click documentation. This has been updated as well. Yeah, I'm liking this. This has had some good improvements. So let's just take a look at samples. Drawing samples. Just got a preview. So that's just drawing in general, not necessarily graphs, but it would give us an idea how we draw natively if we needed to. Data templates, routine, custom styles. Nope, none of them specifically about what we want. So the samples directly probably don't have what we want. Controls maybe. Let's see if there's any kind of graph. I've got a feeling we'll have to actually make a completely custom thing. I can't see them having a graph at the minute, but it's always worth looking. They got this nice new in here as well. Basics, deep dives, developer guides. Yeah, they got some good updates here. Music store app. So I can't see anything directly there yet for graphs. So let's just do a Google search then. There's a graph control here. Let's have a look at this one. And that's more of a graph like that, not like what we're thinking. So what about instead being more specific, like Avalonia UI, draw curves, get a bit more native about what we know we're likely going to need to do. And we have a very specifically customized control. So we have a skier-sharp.canvas, which is obviously native drawing by the look. So it looks like we can do it all completely. So render demo here, I guess. And we do points, pens, draw. Yeah, so it's all native drawing. So it should be pretty easy to do. I mean, it's quite a complicated thing to do, making a graph with colors and things, but we've got full control, definitely. Oh, here we go. So we did miss that. That was in Getting Started. Was it in Getting Started? Yeah, Getting Started, Programming, Graphics, and Animation. So we can do ellipse, lines, polygons, graphs. So we could use, like this, kind of draw a line, and then the points on the line we can progressively add values to until they scroll over to form a line. And then I presume we can make a shape from all them lines and fill it as well. So it might be all we need is to play with these, making polylines and points and things. So it doesn't look that hard at all, actually. So I think that's what we'll do next. We will have a go at making I think a specific control, like fully wrapped control, that you can just pass in audio data to, or even point data, however we want to do it. And then it just graphs that out. And we can expand on that as we go. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope that was useful, and I'll catch you in the next.